On Wednesday evening, a rain-swept city of Plymouth prepared to play host to a royal visitor. For Her Royal Highness the Princess Margaret, the evening was no doubt like many others in her official year. An arrival at a new building, followed by an opportunity to meet civic dignitaries, and then a plaque to unveil. But for Plymouth, indeed the whole of the southwest, the evening was a significant milestone in its history. The occasion was the opening of the new Theatre Royal, and although the plaque records the date officially and correctly as May the 5th, 1982, the story behind that opening has gone on for longer than many people would care to remember, and it's one that we've been following for some time as the theatre has grown and developed in the heart of our city. It was on April the 4th, 1979 that the builders moved in to dig the foundations after more than 15 years of what was at times bitter argument for and against the project. It had all started really in the 1960s when a plan for a 750-seat theatre was considered as too small, while one for 1,500 seats was equally unacceptable as too large. Then, in 1972, a group of disgruntled Plymouth ratepayers demanded a referendum on the theatre as they objected to having to finance the scheme. And as the price rose steadily from £2.7 million to over £8 million, they even appealed to the Ombudsman to put a stop to the whole thing. But it wasn't that the antis had things all their own way. The pros were just as active, and in 1974 a Chamber of Commerce ballot showed a majority in favour of the theatre, though it was another 3 years before the City Council finally gave the go-ahead. The plan they accepted offered a theatre that would convert from 750 seats to 1,300, so satisfying both the little and large lobbies. And a £2 million grant from the EEC went some way to softening the blow of an ever-increasing budget. As the tangle of scaffolding rose on the skyline, a general manager was appointed, Gordon Stratford, and despite the many misgivings that still hung over the project, he had no doubts about joining what he saw as a highly successful venture.
It is, after all, almost virgin territory as far as theatre is concerned, and it is having built in it what I think is probably the best theatre in the country. It's a very, very exciting enterprise, the idea of actually coming to a place that hasn't had the experience of this sort of theatre and having the best sort of theatre placed there all of a sudden. It's an enormous challenge.
The Theatre Royal has certainly been born to a city where a whole generation has grown up without the benefit of a permanent professional theatre. Indeed, since the war, Plymouth and the South West has been condemned as a cultural desert. But then, as theatre critic Harvey Crane explains, that wasn't always the case.
First Theatre Royal was about 1780. It was only a shed at the top of Royal Parade, and it was owned by someone called Sam Foote. He called it the Theatre Royal quite illegally, and when he was asked why, he says, well, it's a good name and it avoids inquiries. And that went on for some years then. Sir John Fulston, the famous architect, built an ornate place over there. It was called the Theatre Royal, don't know why. And for the first 20 years it died a death, and it earned a title for Plymouth as the Theatre of Splendid Misery. And unfortunately, Plymouth, from that day onwards, has had the catch of being called death to the pros. Until, in the middle of Victoria's reign, they had a general manager who reigned for 45 years, and he turned the place upside down and made it the showpiece of the West Country.
As work progressed on the new Theatre Royal, as far as most members of the public were concerned, it was just a mass of steel and concrete, rising slowly and almost in secret behind a wall of hoardings. They couldn't actually see what was going on. All they could do was read in the local press that the cost was still rising, and that the antagonists were now labelling it the most expensive white elephant in the city. But behind the barriers, the theatre was taking shape, realizing the vision that architect Michael Hurd had nurtured for 5 years.
Well, a theatre in any city is a very important building, and I'm absolutely confident that this building will be so for the city of Plymouth.
There's been an awful lot of condemnation of the building and a lot of condemnation of you personally. How do you feel when you're so closely associated with a building that there is this amount of conflict?
Well, I think you can't create a building like this without getting criticised. It's an inevitability. One gets hurt because we are trying to do the very best that we're capable of for the city of Plymouth. But one goes on until it is complete, and then it will prove itself, and people will enjoy it.
But it wasn't until the beginning of this year that people were able to make that judgment for themselves, as the protective hoardings were gradually lowered. The theatre entrance began to take shape and look inviting, while inside carpets were laid, seats positioned, and the finest sound and lighting equipment available installed. There was also a flood of membership to TRAC, the theatre's supporters club, almost as if to prove that there really are people in the southwest who welcome the arrival of a new theatre. So you'd think that after working as a theatre critic for 25 years, Harvey Crane would be among the first to rejoice at the prospect. But when I spoke to him a month before the opening night, the ever-cautious Mr. Crane still had his reservations.
This is Theatre Royal Mark III, and we certainly have waited for it for a long, long time. The trouble is that for 40 years, Plymouth has been without a theatre. So it's now got to build up a following. It's got to establish itself as the premier theatre not only in the West Country, but in the whole of the provinces. For it is. It's a marvellous place inside, technically brilliant, and it's got all the things that one asks for in a theatre. What we want now is something on its stage that will make people rush to go to the theatre. And the only doubt I've got, this must not degenerate into a glorified arts centre. We've got to get what Shakespeare calls the base, common and popular in. And it's all very nice to have the Royal Ballet, to have opera, and to have all the classical plays, but the people who pay are the people who come to laugh and who come to enjoy themselves. So we should need a good balance of light comedies, of summer shows, of pantomimes. Pantomime goes a whale down here. It could run for 2.5 months, properly handled with a first-class cast. And this brings me to the whole point of this place. It's got to be first class.
Well, so far the theatre seems to have done its best to appeal to a fair cross-section of the theatre-going public. Their light entertainment festival includes singers Sasha Distel, Cilla Black, Judy Collins and Mary O'Hara. The Royal Ballet were virtually sold out within days of the box office opening, and Jesus Christ Superstar is taking a steady flow of bookings. Later in the year there's Fiddler on the Roof, Shakespeare, opera and jazz, and of course pantomime. What I can't find on the programme is any mention of a pop concert to satisfy younger theatre-goers, or even much in the way of a good season of plays, with perhaps the exception of one highly successful West End play that they hope to feature in the autumn. But then, as Gordon Stratford points out, there are lots of plans still in the pipeline.
We're going to get the tour of Annie at some time. There are a lot of other shows which are going to come in. At the same time, the theatre's been specially constructed to have a major regional theatre repertory company based in the theatre as a touring theatre. It's a dual-purpose theatre. It's one of the curiosities, one of the great curiosities of this particular theatre, that it's been built as a major touring theatre and the local regional rep in one building. It's a bit as if the Nottingham Playhouse was based in the Nottingham Theatre Royal. So you've got two theatres for one. You just alter the architecture of the auditorium and you change it from a touring theatre to a rep theatre. So to a certain degree, we're hedging our bets. We're able to produce our own particular product and build our own audience on that side of it, at the same time as having the largest scale proper touring product that's available throughout the country.
Hello there. Have you 2 tickets, please, for Friday night for the Sleeping Beauty?
In the booking office, as elsewhere in the theatre, the very latest technology is available.
Yes, the £5 or the £4?
Everything is done by computer. The machine will find you a seat, process your money, and even print out your ticket.
Judy Collins, Knights of May. 2 seats in stores, £5.
It can also print out the names and addresses of those people living in the area who might be interested in a particular sort of show. Now, that's not quite as sinister as it might sound, as the information officer, Chris Grady, explains.
It's here as a memory device. We are putting in the names of people who are interested in the theatre or have been interested in other activities, and we're putting in their names with their interests, so that at the flick of a switch we can print out labels with people's addresses on of people who are interested, say, in a pantomime, for a big mailing for a pantomime. And we make sure that we have their names and addresses here. It also saves on postage, because we can sort it into postcodes and that sort of thing using the computer, which makes it a more efficient service and means that people can be sure of getting information about the theatre.
I think it's true to say that one of the biggest problems always in Plymouth with the theatre has been apathy. Now, how are you going to overcome this?
By making sure that people know what the building really is. They've had it for too long as just being a building site. Now at last they'll be able to see inside and see there's something for them. By making sure that everybody in the West Country knows it's there.
I'm sure that people are worried about the financial aspect of it. How much is it going to cost them to come here?
It'll fluctuate enormously from the very high prices, really, sort of the £12 prices, top price for the pop concerts, big pop concerts. But there'll always be seats at £2 or less.
Judging from the way people have been flocking to buy tickets since the booking office opened in March, apathy isn't a problem in the short term. But there was that little matter of the Ombudsman and the attempt to kill the theatre at source, and that suggests raw antagonism. So I asked Publicity Officer Mary Price how they were going to overcome that obstacle.
Well, I think you show people what they've got. Antagonism in the main is based on fear. People have an idea that it's going to cost them, the ratepayer, an awful lot of money, and that it's not going to be accessible to them. You make sure that they all understand the theatre is accessible, that it's got shows on that they are going to like, that people are going to come to it, that it's going to pay its way, and that it's going to be a very prestigious project for the entire South West, and then suddenly the fear evaporates. It's going to cost £2 for the cheapest seat in this theatre. Now, it costs that, if not more, to go to the local cinema. I think once people understand that, and they start coming through the door, and that's it. You're going to kill the fear.
So, getting them through the door, that's hurdle number 1. Making the audience feel at home, that's priority number 2, and one which falls to the house manager, Angela Lanyon. She's the very public face of the Theatre Royal, the person who'll be standing just inside the door to welcome theatre-goers, to make them feel that going to the theatre is a special occasion, and that they're special too. So, how does she plan to do it?
Well, I'm going to smile at them first of all, because I think this is the most important thing you can do to anybody when they come into a building, so that they feel that to try and make it as personal to people as it can be.
And what about the things that are going on in the theatre? What's going to make them feel at home here?
Well, we're going to have music in the foyer. Up in the second foyer, we're going to have a baby grand piano, and we shall hope to have various different types of music, jazz, light classics, pop, whatever appears to be appropriate to the show that we've got on, to create an atmosphere before people go in, to make it a special occasion for them. In the beginning of the last century, everybody went to the theatre. There was melodramas, and it doesn't happen now, so I want them to come back and feel that this is their theatre, and that we can have the children romping all over the place. We can have them creating little actions of their own in different parts of the theatre, and so everybody in Plymouth can come in and think, well, this is ours, we belong here, this is what it's for, where we can all get together and have fun.
And this is what all that enthusiasm is about. And also, really, the thing that anyone who lives here in the West Country and cares at all about theatre has been waiting to see, the finished interior of Plymouth's new Theatre Royal. And I must say that when you stand on this enormous stage with those 1,300 seats rising away behind me, it really is a very, very impressive building. Now, it's taken them 3 years to build it at a cost of £9 million. And of course, the question on everyone's lips is it all worth it? And that's something that really no one can answer, not for 1, 2, maybe even 5 years from now, when hopefully the box office will be kept busy and the house full notices will be put up outside the theatre every night of the week. All that we can say is that the architects and the technical designers have built here what is already being acclaimed as one of the finest, best equipped theatres, not just in Britain, but in the whole of Northern Europe. A place that's going to be a joy to come into for artists and audience alike.
Okay, Matthew, dead man on. Get your eye on it.
The most obvious and spectacular bit of technology is undoubtedly the mobile ceiling. 80 tons of machinery which, at the flick of a switch, can convert the theatre from an intimate 768 seats to a maximum of 1,296 in just 6 minutes.
And we're there. Thank you very much.
The flying tower, at over 80 feet high, is one of the largest in the country. There are 78 of those ropes, each one carefully counterbalanced, and collectively capable of raising enough scenery for 2 complete touring shows.
Can you give me a level on that, please, Steve?
The theatre has 62 microphones set into the walls, the floors, and all around the stage, and the man whose job it is to balance them to give the theatre perfect sound is Peter Hyde.
Thank you.
His objective? Quite simply to ensure that every member of the audience, no matter where they're sitting, hears every note and every word uttered on stage, whether it's a pop concert or a poetry reading. In addition, the theatre is fitted with what's called assisted resonance, which means that they can create a sound in the intimate atmosphere of the Theatre Royal that would do justice to the grandeur of the Albert Hall.
Hello, Steve. Can you hear me? I just want to check number 1 bridge and find the 4 specials. Okay, circuit 2, circuit 3.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Next door in the control room, Chief Electrician Steve Elliott is feeding a lighting program into that ubiquitous computer.
It's 29. 55 at 3. Okay.
There are 274 lights on the stage, and with this sophisticated equipment, Steve can preset the cues for a whole series of productions. Everything from a single spotlight to a dramatic special effect. In fact, a whole range of lighting that would be the envy of many West End theatres. These dressing rooms may look a bit Spartan, but believe me, compared with most British theatres, they're almost palatial. A shower to each room is a real luxury. There are 21 dressing rooms in the theatre, enough to take 100 artists, with separate rooms for visiting orchestras, rehearsal rooms and a laundry, and many more facilities to make this a really comfortable and pleasant place for actors and musicians to work. Incidentally, the unfinished look of the bare walls is deliberate. If they'd been finished in more traditional materials like plaster and paint, it would have added several £1,000s more to the bill. Well, so much for the technicians and the artists, but now what about us, the audience? Well, the whole feeling in the theatre is one of space and light. There's an exhibition gallery to show off the work of local artists, and 2 spacious bars, one of which will keep normal licensing hours, so you don't have to go to the theatre to enjoy a pint in the Circle Bar. In the auditorium, the seats are carefully spaced so that even the longest legs won't feel cramped, and the heating and air conditioning system can be adjusted to give a comfortable temperature inside the building, regardless of the weather outside. In the 65-seater restaurant, theatre-goers can enjoy a pre-show dinner for as little as £3.50. But everyone who works in the theatre, and that includes the restaurant staff, are determined that this won't be a building that only opens its doors at 7 in the evening and closes again at 11. They want it to be a building that lives, one that people will use throughout the day, somewhere to pop in for coffee or lunch or even afternoon tea, as well as being a centre for entertainment. So the designers and the staff have done their bit to provide Plymouth with what really is a theatrical showpiece. But how, I asked Mary Price, do you now convey that to your customers?
Well, I think the main thing is to communicate to people it is their building. One of the things I always say to people is The theatre has been built for the people of Plymouth and the southwest. It is your building, you use it, and that is the main thing to communicate to people. So they begin to have an empathy with the building. They begin to be proud of it. They begin to think, oh, what's on at the Theatre Royal? Let's go. And once they come here, they will feel very welcome, and they will think, right, it's our building. We can walk into it. We can sit in it. It doesn't matter if the kids spill their lollies on the floor, because nobody will actually rush around and mop it up.
On Monday, April the 26th, the theatre opened its doors to welcome its very first audience.
Welcome to the Theatre Royal. Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
What's the time, John?
Down in the dressing rooms, Ben, Forster and members of the drumbeat company were getting ready to make a little bit of history as the very first actors to appear on the new stage in front of an audience. What this audience had been invited to see wasn't so much a full performance as a collection of sights and sounds to test the theatre out, a dry run if you like, to make sure that it really does work for the artists, the technicians and the audience. An exercise that was to be repeated on 3 further evenings. For the theatre staff, it was an exciting moment. What had been an empty shell suddenly became a living thing, where usherettes and commissionaires, bar staff and house manager got the flavour of their theatre at work, while the public settled into the new seats, found out how much legroom there was, marvelled at the mobile roof, and generally began to assess this much-talked-about building at close quarters. The evening began with a clever piece of mime to test the acoustics, but not of the stage, for the audience. What followed was simply fun and entertainment, but with an underlying serious technical purpose.
We saw the lovely new theatre. I'm sure you must all think it's great.
And I bet that you think it's marvellous that you pay for it out of the rate.
What's this?
Homemade vanilla ice cream.
Oh! Well, this is what I think of your homemade rubbish. The little man walked round and round to find an eating place in town. He looked at all of the menus to find what 15 pence could do.
During the interval, it was the turn of the bar staff to see how they would cope with an audience of 700, an audience who were already forming fairly strong opinions about the building.
I think one of the biggest problems when we first came in was the fact that those little signs that tell you where to go aren't big enough. So if you get a full capacity audience in here trying to find their way, imagine what it's going to be like.
When they got over to one side, that you couldn't really hear it, really, could you? They were saying from the back, the microphones were in the wrong place there.
It was a valuable first night. Before the evening was over, Gordon Stratford would also be told that there weren't enough tables in the bars, and that every door leading to the auditorium needed superhuman strength to open them, something that could be put right the following morning. After all, that is what dry runs are for.
New dry boat anyway, dry boat. Upstairs, the seating is perfect because the seats in front of you can see over the head as well. Very good to see over the head.
Certainly very comfortable seats, aren't they?
I think so. Very nice. Yeah, no, there's not enough ashtrays. There's not enough bar stuff.
But this wasn't primarily an evening for the public. Most of the adjustments were being made behind the scenes in the technical areas. Jeremy Curry, the stage manager and key liaison between artists and technicians during a performance. If the communication system doesn't work, now is the time to find out, not in the middle of the first night of the Royal Ballet.
Listen, we've got 10 minutes of this, and then it's the string quartet.
In the sound box, Peter Hyde was ironing out any bugs in the system. while the heating engineers were able to put their sophisticated air conditioning unit through its paces and monitor the effects of a near-capacity audience.
You know what? It's woodwind first, string second, brass third, piano fourth, whole orchestra fifth now.
In fact, all over the building, theatre staff were putting theory into practice, and on the whole finding out that most things went according to plan. Which meant that, apart from a few grumbles, the audience came away with a good impression of the theatre, which is important, because the one thing that Gordon Stratford and his team won't be allowed to forget is that however successful the Theatre Royal might be, it can never run at a profit. It's reckoned that the theatre will have to be subsidised by Plymouth ratepayers to the tune of £300,000 a year, a figure that Stratford knows they can never recoup.
I don't see them getting their money back as such, directly. Yes, I do see them getting their money back as far as the service is concerned and the industry and the various activities that they bring to the region. I think that they'll more than pay for itself as far as that's concerned. As far as a direct ongoing enterprise is concerned, I don't think any theatre in the country outside the West End that's at all successful can run without some sort of subsidy.
Those who oppose the theatre will find that a bitter pill to swallow. But the chairman of the theatre subcommittee, Councillor Tom Savoury, finds nothing unacceptable in a city council being prepared to subsidise the arts.
Every leisure activity that we provide loses money, if you want to put it like that, with the exception of squash and golf and possibly sailing. But all the others, football, hockey, cricket, tennis, bowls, you name it, it costs money. Why should people who are interested in theatrical performances be deprived? Why can't they have their share of the cake?
So you really don't mind whether it loses money or not, you're just happy that it's here?
Yes, that is not to say that one's got an irresponsible attitude towards a thing. I think it's fair to say that we realised it would need subsidising from the rates. That doesn't mean to say we say, well, there it is, get on with it, and we'll pick up the tabs at the end of the day. We've worked out what we think is a reasonable contribution, and the figure this year is £410,000, and the theatre's got to be run within that subsidy as far as we're concerned.
What the theatre needs now is support, a bit of positive thinking. Ignore it, and it will surely die. I have to pin my colours to the mast and say that I hope it will succeed. I want my city to have a theatre to be proud of, and happily, I'm not alone.
One of the criticisms which has been made of Plymouth, and I think is perfectly true, is that it's dead at night. Royal Parade is cold and lifeless at night, and we know this is true. I think that theatre will be the heart of Plymouth. At the bottom of Royal Parade, we're going to have light, we're going to have warmth, we're going to have people 7 days a week, winter and summer, and I think that will be quite dramatic. Also, it is a theatre of excellence, and I think the acting profession will want to come here. I think the top flight actors in the country will want to come down here and act and play in it.
There's no reason why the place shouldn't attract the most enormous audience from all over Devon, from a lot farther afield than ever came before, because they will have people and they will have ballet and opera and plays that they would not have got before.
I won't take any notice of the pessimists who talk about white elephants. I think this has got a fine chance of being the best success story in the whole of the provinces. It could rival Bristol and Chichester.
It is going to work because the people of the southwest and of Plymouth are going to say, ah, that's mine, and I'm going to go and I'm going to use it.
Whether it'll work or not, I don't know. All I can say is it is a beautiful theatre to work, and it is the support it needs.
It has got to be a success. It's got to be a 99% success. Otherwise, Plymouth will degenerate back into what they used to call theatre rural.
Super theatre, brilliant theatre, hear everything, marvellous.
Will you come?
Most certainly, I hope most of Plymouth will. Really good.
fantastic.
John?